Beans, in the Nurses' Health Study, the food with the most protection against breast cancer were beans. Because beans they actually showed more protection than greens because people weren't eating much greens in the Nurses' Health Study, but a lot of people ate beans. And if you're not eating greens, then beans become the most protective food you're eating. But of course, the combination of beans, greens, onions, and mushrooms gives you the most protection. But beans, we know, are full of IP6, they're inositol pentachous phosphate, and they have a very powerful anti-cancer effects. In the Nurses' Health Study, the twice-weekly intake lowered risk of breast cancer occurrence by 24%. That's incredible. That's just 2 times a week, lowered risk of breast cancer by 24% compared to women not eating beans. And the high glycemic diet, people eat more pizza and bread and croissants and donuts and cookies and white rice and white potato and all the white stuff. They, of course, increase their risk of breast cancer by 87%. The most dangerous thing you can do, even worse than eating meat, was eating all these high glycemic white stuff, the white flour and the bagels and the pasta. I go and speak at these conferences, these health conferences, mostly medical conferences. I'm speaking at these medical conferences, but the whole audience is mostly health professionals or doctors. And what are they eating? What are they serving them? Bagels. Bagels and cookies and other products made from white flour all the time. And I say, well, thank you for bringing those, demonstrating the things that cause cancer and cause heart disease right to the conference so people can see it clearly right in front of their face. Then they never invite me back again. Okay. High glycemic diet, increased risk of breast cancer by 87%, and inositol pentachous phosphate from beans encourages apoptosis, death of cancer cells, and doesn't allow tumors to grow. It is anti-angiogenic, and you know it's powerful, or it wouldn't be 26 letters long. Inositol pentachous phosphate. Wow. Thank you for laughing, because that means that you haven't heard this lecture before. The other 400 people heard it already. That's why they didn't laugh. Yeah. All right. You know what? But the jokes, let me just tell you something. That laughing and smiling makes you live longer. Anti-cancer effects, right? The joke doesn't have to be funny. You could have heard the joke. I still smile at the same jokes I've been telling for the last 20 years. If you just smile, it makes you laugh anyway, even if you heard it already, and just laugh. It's not even funny because you live longer anyway. That's not funny. That's stupid. Sorry about that. All right, onions and cancer. Well, I was kind of shocked when I was in my medical career, and I wasn't a big onion eater. I didn't like onions that much. When I started to look at all the data and the studies showing how radically protective onions and scallions were against cancer, I started eating them more in my diet. Between 50 and 88% reduction of cancers in people who are regular consumer of onions and scallions. Now I put that in my food all the time. And you know what happened over the years? I began to like them. Now I love putting red onion or scallion on my chopped kale. I make my California cream kale with a cashew hemp seed sauce on the kale. I drizzle some thickened tomato sauce with sun-dried tomatoes on that, and I put on my red onion or my thing of scallion right on top. I wouldn't have done that years ago. I didn't know onions were so protective. Because people say, I don't like onions, or they taste sharp, but you know what? You like what you get used to eating. You increase the anti-cancer effects when you eat them raw, and you increase the anti-cancer effects when you chew them very well. That's why I allocate the time during lunch to have that big salad, and all the people that are following my protocol, that are at my retreat, that are listening to that have cancer, I'm carefully instructing them to liquefy every mouthful in your mouth that you put in your mouth of that salad, and the raw scallion and the microgreens and the sprouts and the watercress. Liquefy it in your mouth before you swallow it. Get the most potential out of that. Take your time. Chew it really well. I don't care if you take a half an hour to finish that salad, but really chew it to a liquid before you swallow it. It's one big salad you're having every day. Make the most of it. Really chew it well. Mushrooms. We talked about the ergothioneine in mushrooms and tempeh and soybeans. And by the way, I'm leaving beans going on to mushrooms. But don't forget the fact that the most protective bean against cancer is a soybean. Most protective against breast cancer. The basic ordinary soybean, not tofu and not soy milk, because tofu is made from soy milk, but the whole bean. Like when you get the dried soybean and you soak it overnight, you cook it in a soup and make a chili out of it, or you take tempeh or those edamame, which are like the boiled fresh soybeans, they're rich in those compounds that have anti-estrogenic effects on breast and prostate tissue, so they don't let the estrogen stimulate the breast and the prostate. A lot of nonsensical myths on the internet telling people to be fearful of soy, but the opposite is true. It's the most protective against cancer. Plus the fact that soy protects you against cancer, has anti-estrogenic effects where it needs to on the prostate and breast, but it has pro-estrogenic effects on the bones where it helps make for more bone strength. So where it's supposed to have pro-estrogen effect, it does, and we're supposed to have anti-estrogenic effects, it does. So how many of you eat some soybean regularly in your diet? Not tofu and soy milk, but a real bean, you know? Yeah, that's great. You should. No, we're talking about the fried inorganic stuff that you get at Burger Hut. We're doing Q&A at the end, and all those comments can be flying at me. It'd be great. You could see who could get. We could have like a joke contest. Was that a joke, by the way? Of course, we want people to eat not the GMO stuff with the glyphosate in it and stuff like that, right? Of course, we want to eat the organic beans that isn't contaminated, and mushrooms. Okay, we're ready to move on to mushrooms? Great, because I love mushrooms. I love moving on to them. Mushrooms are the most powerful angiogenic inhibitors, and you know what that means, right? They have anti-fat storage effects. They have antigenic effect. Remember I told you fat cells promote a hormone called aromatase that produces estrogen? And you take that anti-aromatase pill called tamoxifen, or Arava. In other words, you take these drugs from doctors when you have breast cancer to lower your natural production of estrogen by the body. Well, mushrooms naturally have aromatase inhibitors in them. And when you eat a variety of different types of mushrooms, you get tremendous benefits against keeping your estrogen levels curtailed, and prevents the breast tissue and the prostate tissue from being stimulated with estrogen-like compounds. So we want to regularly include mushrooms in our diet. Mushrooms are an integral part of the human immune system. And low-sugar fruits like berries and pomegranates and loquats and passion fruit and kumquats, and in other words, wild fruits and low-sugar fruits have tremendous powerful effects against cancer. Berries, one of the most powerful anti-cancer foods, are right in the freezer, your freezer, those wild blueberries. And the wild blueberries don't have to be organic. Like the Wyman, W-Y-M-A-N, blueberries, they're not organic, but there's no chemical residue on them. The reason they're not organic is because they used the fungicide on the plants when they were just growing, when they were growing, the sprouting the little bushes. Once they started to produce berries, they're not using any chemicals on them. There's no chemical residue on the berry itself. You can still eat those wild blueberries, even if they're not organic. And when you buy them frozen, they're 1/4 the price of fresh, and you can allocate out what you want, what you need for that day without having it go bad and you don't go moldy in your refrigerator. It's very economical. I use frozen berries all the time. Frozen berries, frozen cherries, frozen strawberries. I even bought frozen pomegranate IRELs too. And of course, we know that these have powerful anti-cancer effects. These foods high in phenols and anthocyanins, they lower glycemic load. In other words, I'm saying right now is they lower blood pressure, they lower cholesterol, they protect the brain against dementia, and they have powerful anti-cancer effects. And they taste sweet, but they actually lower insulin because they're so effective at producing beneficial bacteria that prevent insulin excursion, or insulin going through too quick, or preventing glucose going quickly into the bloodstream, keeping insulin more moderate. They're very favorable types of They're very favorable sweet foods, and you don't have to be afraid of eating fruit, even if you're diabetic. So the anti-cancer, there are a broad spectrum of anti-cancer effects of berries and these other fruits like passion fruits and loquats and kumquats. Like I tell people to buy one of these Mayway kumquat plants and put them in your living room or your garage if you live in the Northeast, and put it outside in April and bring it in your house. And you know what happens when you do that? When you bring it in your house, you have fresh Mayway kumquats, which are a sweet kumquat. They're not the oblong kumquat that's shaped like an egg that tastes sour. They're the round kumquat that tastes sweet, and they really taste delicious. But you have kumquats all winter long. I have 4 kumquat trees in my house in New Jersey. They're about this big. Right now, they're swollen with a whole bunch of kumquats on them, and I'm eating kumquats every day from these trees that I grow right here in Jersey. And you can grow some tropical fruit in a pot, and you put it on a little pot wheel, like one of those pot dollies, and you wheel it outside in the winter, and you wheel it inside in the summer. Wheel it inside in the winter and outside in the summer.